So here we are. It's I gotta say this conversation was in the planning for many months, but was finalized in a matter of minutes. So I want to thank you guys. I want to welcome Jake and Max and Finnmark Sauna in Great Britain. And the first and most obvious question I have for you guys is: are you in fact twins?
So we're not actually twins. We earned that name. It's quite a fun, charming name that kind of stuck. So we did an installation for a rather famous British but Hollywood actor who's known. He's a comedian. He's known for his good lines, and he just started referring to us as the sauna twins. And people generally say we look very similar, although I've been fortunate enough to get to a barber's, which have just opened here in the UK, but Max hasn't. So
I'm a bit behind on.
I know, but I gotta say, Jake, you got your money's worth on that cut.
Yeah, I just thought it's one of those things. It had been so long since I've been to the barber's. I thought if this locks down again, I got to get a 6-month cut, right? I've got to go real short. So
yeah, and I haven't.
People.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, people keep telling me I look more and more Nordic the more and more it kind of grows out. So
I like it.
I don't know if that's
Max, I like the look, and just in full disclosure, I haven't had my hair cut since before COVID, so probably February, and I'm just kind of riding it out. Although my wife, I can look outside right now. Julia's got a comb and a scissors just ready to go, and I keep delaying for some crazy reason. So. But welcome to Sauna Talk, and
thanks.
And so you are brothers, but not twins.
Yeah, that's correct.
We got that covered, and I'm going to ask you, because I know listeners are going to want to know who this famous actor is, and if you want to keep that anonymous, I'll just have to ask: was he in a series potentially with the letter O and a place where you sit and do work, like meaning The Office, or is it a different?
No. He's. I think he's in. He's in. I'm trying to think of a good film that a lot of people would have known him in without giving too much away.
Yeah.
We'd probably give it away.
Yeah.
Is he a spiritual kind of guy? Is he kind of?
He's quite spiritual. Yeah. Well, put it this way, he likes to do yoga in the sauna. So
right on. Right. Yep.
The other thing he once said to us, a few days after we installed it, was that he hadn't felt as euphoric and as good since he took a vow to be sober. So
good.
So he. He's a huge advocate of the, positive euphoria that you get when you combine sauna and cold plunge together. And I think that speaks for itself, if you can.
Yeah.
Go on, fire away.
Right on, Jake. I'm guessing that this build was quite unique because it was probably a repurpose of like maybe an old like chicken coop or some sort of thing like that. So you had to really put some right brain work into this project. I'm just projecting. Could that be the case?
Well, we've featured it a few times. It's actually, the build has been featured as well in Grand Designs magazine. It got a lot of positive press because of of where it was on the property. It's quite an old property, and there's an old Victorian potting shed. So it kind of, you can find that online. The blend of like trying to, him and his lovely wife wanted to keep it looking kind of rustic, but still have that Nordic kind of sleek, elegant, modernist kind of feel. And I think Grand Designs magazine thought we struck a really good blend of the two, and I hats off to the design team for that.
Well, I think that one also contextualizes or helps. Summarizes the kind of installs that we really love to do or specialize in as well. In a number of ways, it was not ideal space to install into or build a sauna, but we just don't like saying no.
Right.
So,
Yes.
yeah, it was
Just to get a little bit nerdy on that build specifically, when you're dealing with a stone structure, did you guys put rigid insulation and fur it out on the inside? Is that how you were able to contain it thermally, or what approach did you take for that?
Yeah, so it was specialist Kingspan insulation from Finland, the Sauna Satu boards, and with it being an old Victorian potting shed, I think it had a kind of brick laying pattern called a Sussex bond, which is it's a solid brick wall, about, I think it's two courses deep. So it was great for having a nice substrate to fix into, but I don't know whether through subsidence or other things, old properties all seem to do the same thing, which is the walls are never plumb, they're never vertical.
Right.
So we've put the insulation on sort of with adhesive foam, and then spent ages trying to with the furring strips get it all plumb and square as a space.
Yeah, it makes you realize how much easier a new build is, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. But we would have built a stud wall around every side, but it was very tight on space as it was.
Yeah,
so sometimes you just got to work with what you got.
Exactly. Well said. How about the background? I mean, if we were to kind of peel this onion way back with you guys, brothers, maybe I could ask the question is, explain your first sauna experience, or when did you first get the bug? Not just as a business, but maybe as the experience itself. When did you each become exposed to good sauna?
So I suppose I was, out of the two of us, was the first really to kind of, it was a series of experiences for me that kind of led me to this kind of rather prophetic realization that that sauna is not what so many British, certainly of the British public, know as an experience. To put it bluntly, what most people have experienced here as a sauna is so far removed from how good an experience it can be, that it's, this story starts with neither of us really caring much for sauna, because, if all you've ever tried is a really dimly lit, poorly ventilated, super hot, dry space in your local gym after a workout, then your experience is like a tiny, really narrow part of the experience, and certainly what I would consider, like, I regularly sauna, and I still don't sauna like that. So my first experience of a sauna, when I was at university, I worked closely with the head gardener at the Botanic Gardens, who, after being this guy in this community he'd welcomed a Finnish family into the community. So they'd arrived there with no friends, and he became friends with them. They invited him back out to Finland, and we're going back like 30 plus years, right? And they invited him back to Finland. He fell in love with Finland, as everybody does when they go there, and the sauna experience. And he decided to build his own proper sauna in his garden. And I was working in the Botanic Gardens there over the winter period. It was like freezing cold, and he would always come to me like at the end of the day and be like, "I'm going to light up the sauna if you want to come." And as a kind of prude British guy, I was a bit like, who's this weird guy who keeps trying to invite me to a sauna, right? It has some kind of weird connotations. And a really lovely guy, and I didn't really think anything negative of it, but I was like, no, I'll pass, thanks. And eventually, like, he sort of said, look, I'll set it all up for you. You can try it out. You and your friends can come and try a proper sauna, and you'll see it's, this what I'm sort of pitching you here. So me and a couple of friends, actually, and a good American friend of mine, a guy called Dave, and his partner, decided. I said, hey, do you fancy coming trying this out? He was in the area at the time, and so we went and tried it, and we were like, it was blown away. He had a sauna, wood burning sauna and cold plunge set up and we did what most Finns would do, pouring water on the stones, make it nice and steamy. And I really liked that. And I thought, oh, how cool. That's such a weird experience. And then I did some work in continental Europe, and I kind of was a bit more open and receptive to the idea that sauna could be this different thing. And the more I tried kind of continental saunas, and then ended up spending some time working up in Finland, I was like, hey, the closer you get to the Finland, the better this gets. And if you go into Finland, it's like another level entirely. And I remember just being like, hey, Max, you got to, we're the kind of brothers where we're like, hey, you got to try this. Like it's something, it's another world. And, once you're in Finland and you try things like savu sauna, so smoke saunas, or the heat storing traditional heat storing saunas. So these are in Finnish aitokioas, the kind of huge 1 ton of stones. They're preheated, they get super hot, and then the fire dies down, and then they use them over the course of the day. Those saunas, they're like a different kind of heat. They're enjoyed with steam. And I sort of, I welcomed Max into those experiences. And I remember just sitting with him and being like, this is so good. Like, why don't we have something like this in the UK? Like, why,
Then it started with the project at home, which was, I guess you can probably trace that back to baby being the embers, the initial kind of spark that fueled Finnmark. Was we'd gone to our father, who'd we basically wanted to convince him to build one in our parents' garden. And our dad had some building materials left over, and also, having traveled around Europe a lot on business and experienced sauna outside the UK, was like, that's an excellent idea. Well, why not?
So at this point as well, I should add, so I'd come back from Finland with these kind of grand designs of kind of bringing this Finnish sauna experience. And I had basically reached out to a number of suppliers as a wanting to be a sales agent, essentially sell the equipment in. So we suddenly had like access to a load of materials and equipment that we wanted to sell into the trade. And I was in the process of building this e-commerce site where people could buy all the equipment that they needed. And we decided, right, we've got to bring this. We've got to champion this, right? We've got to bring this into our parents' home. And so we did. We built this lovely alder-clad wood-burning sauna with a 200 kilos of stone heater, so like a proper beast. With a big stone tile wall behind the heater as well that you can splash water up, and like the steam, the lolu in there, the sauna steam is like just incredible. Yeah.
So Jake, you nailed it. Like you sort of coddled together this backyard sauna at your parents' place, but you had, I think it could be said, you had this sort of divine intervention that even though you're kind of winging it, you created a great space with great heat. Is that right?
So, yeah, I mean, when we were out in Finland, we spent a lot of time really kind of nerding out on how to do it properly, right? Because as you'll know, and as many people who are listening to this will know, that there's so much misinformation out there online. There are people who just talk absolute, like, dangerous stuff, like stuff that if you did it would like literally endanger your life. So we started asking every single Finn that we came to, like, how do you build a sauna properly, and what makes a good sauna? And there are two things here. There is for a Finn, sauna is like your grandmother's secret recipe, right? Every Finn has a slightly different one, and every Finn thinks that theirs is the best. However, if you map all of those, so, we spoke to hundreds of Finns, there is a consensus about, okay, well, it should be properly ventilated. It should be, properly insulated and vapor sealed. You should have a heater with a lot of stones. The more the stones, the better. the kind of the things that they like to argue about is, should the vent be exactly here or should it be 10 centimeters to the left? You know,
Right.
so
Right.
And the
when
height
you
of the
when you get
benches and the
right.
height, yeah. Sorry, go
When
ahead.
no, I was going to say, you're right. Height of the benches. When you get to that level of nuance, you know you have consensus, right?
yeah. So there's consensus there amongst the Finns, and we work to that. We have like an impressive library of literature on the subject from Finnish authors, from even some American authors, architects, all that sort of stuff. And you know, there's certain things we weight heavier than others in terms of how we should do things. And then we render all of that down and try and always apply that methodology to any install we do. So one perfect example here is we do a load of, in the UK, everything is small, right? We have a lot of people living in a small space. So we do quite a few of these like micro sauna projects. But when we put together a design or a quote for people, often they'll show us what somebody else has done and say, oh, somebody's done a design for this, it looks like this. And they'll show me a picture that just has a lower bench and a tiny little heater. And I'm like, well, this is a piece of crap, because you're going to be sat at ground level and all the heat is going to be way above your head, right? So we would always in that space do a raised floor that you stepped up onto. So there's not enough space for a lower bench in a really tight space, but you do a raised floor and a higher bench, because you're going to be spending 99% of your time up on the top bench anyway. So you know, you can't always perfectly design it to exactly old grandma Pikkanen's recipe of how to build the best sauna, but you can apply all of the consensus aspects of good ventilation, you know, proper insulation, vapor sealing. You know, we batten our cladding, which I'm sure is something you'll come onto as well, and you know, heaters with a lot of stone that designed to have a lot of water poured onto them.
Beautiful. I was going to ask about the sauna perceptions in the UK versus the USA, and we can kind of riff on that. I've been following you guys and what you're up to, and I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times, or maybe 10 out of 10 times, when you guys are saying something, writing about something, I'm nodding my head up and down. It's such a parallel universe, but what's going on in the UK and what's going on in the USA about sauna perceptions. And you alluded to this before, Jake, about bad sauna, you know, and maybe I'll ask the question this way. Do you guys ever, let me ask you like this. How do you balance coming across really trying to help people with the authentic versus coming across with a perception of snobbiness or esoteric or, you know, highfalutin? How do you get that right?
I think, well, from my point of view, I mean, it comes, I don't really think about it when I'm talking to people, because it's something that I guess we're so passionate about and believe so much that certainly I come across anyone who's passionate about something and is, you know, educated in that field. You know, you find yourself listening to what they say, and they can make a very coherent, you know, good case for that. You know, and it's not a yeah, we try not to make it like feel an elite or exclusive kind of thing. It's accessible on so many different levels, and we try and accommodate all parts of the market so that no one feels like, oh, to have the real sauna experience, I have to write a check with several zeros on the end.
I think you know, Max makes a really valid point there, and one of the things that we always pride ourselves on doing is giving a lot of support to people. You know, not expecting a sale or whatever. You know, people call us up all the time to pick our brains, and we are just an open book. We'll give you as much information as you need, and hopefully, in working with us, you'll realize that we're, you know, our kind of ethos is we stand by products of good quality, good durability, and the authentic experience. So that means something that is built to last, it's hard wearing, and it comes from Finland. It's made for the real experience, and because of that, the kind of equipment and materials that we work with, they're not the cheapest, right? The Chinese equipment is always gonna, the Far Eastern equipment is always gonna beat that marketplace. But if you broke down,
or to interject on that, the equipment that is made in China for a Finnish company also fits that.
Yeah. So there's plenty of those out there. Yeah. So there's plenty of those out there rebadging Chinese-made products with, their logo on and calling it a Finnish heater, and they ship around the world, and people think they're buying Finnish equipment, and it comes from China.
Yeah.
So
go Max.
I was just going to say, just as a side note, if you want to do some research and see which of the manufacturers doing this, go on Alibaba and search for saunas.
Search for if you're about to buy a heater or some equipment, right? Go on to Alibaba, which is like Amazon for Chinese goods, and type in the heater that you're looking at and see if you can find it on Alibaba. See if you can find that manufacturer, because I tell you what, that is the quickest way to find. And we see it all the time, people posting on social media, I picked up this thing for, next to no money and da, da, da. And you look at it and you're like, yeah, but I mean, there's some simple economics going on, right? If you build something in Finland, they've got high minimum wage, high taxes, and they build really heavy duty, high quality equipment, right? So there's a baseline cost that's going to be. And let me tell you now, even at for modular outdoor kits and things like that, the raw cost in materials and equipment for kits like that is significant. And then you've got like £1,000 of freight costs to get it to the UK, probably $1,200 or whatever. So there's a baseline cost that proper Finnish equipment can be. But I mean, to go back to your earlier point here, so there's a symbol called the Finnish key flag symbol that's awarded to equipment that is like properly made in Finland, and anybody interested in proper Finnish goods should look out for that. There are a lot of producers who have that for heaters, for equipment, things like that. And I think going back to your earlier point about support and snobbishness, I think social media has become like a battleground for a lot of people. I often say to people, so there's this kind of issue that I keep spotting in people's build processes, which is that they use regular polyisosanurate insulation. This is regular PIR insulation board. So Reticel, Quintherm, regular Kingspan, just to name a few UK brands that sell this stuff. They probably exist in the States as well. And if you use that stuff is heat tested and heat safe up to about 60 degrees. But if you heat up polyisosanurate insulation beyond that, it starts to release hydrogen cyanide, which is super toxic. And recently there was a tragedy in London where a building burnt down, the Grenfell Tower. And the researchers now believe that a large number of the people in that tower were actually poisoned by the hydrogen cyanide gas that was released when the polyisosanurate insulation was degrading and then combusting. So this isn't an insignificant thing. And here in the UK, it's a unregulated industry. So any muppet can just put wood on the walls and be like, this is a sauna. But there's no governing body saying, hang on a second, you need to make sure that if you're going to be using a PIR insulation board, you use something like the Kingspan Sauna Satu board, or there's another producer, FinFoam, that produces a stable board. There are producers out there, and it's not as cheap as a standard PIR board, but it's heat safe up to like 200 degrees. So So sometimes I see people building stuff with this standard insulation, and before they put any cladding on or anything, I'm like, oh, be careful, you know, make sure this is safe. And instead of taking it on board and going, oh, thanks for the tip, you know, they're like militant, and like, oh, somebody told me on the phone it was fine, you don't know what you're talking about. And all they see is my name, right? They don't know that, like, I do this day in, day out. I know this subject inside out. And I just lose. I'm like, oh, look, I'm just trying to help here. Because you don't have to use PIR insulation board, right? If you want to do it cost effectively, you can do it with rock wool or wood wool or like a mineral wool, and use an aluminium foil vapor barrier.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you. Just to interject, Jake, why are hodgepodge sauna builders or the casual sauna builder using rigid to begin with instead of rolled batting like Rockwell?
Yeah, so for us, it's a cost benefit analysis, right? So our guys install a bespoke installation over the course of a week. So they'll go in on a Monday and finish on a Friday, or hand over on a Saturday maybe. And most of our projects, regardless of the size, seem to take that long. If we were to use the rock wool, it's slightly less thermally efficient. You can cause thermal bridging as well. So it's not a perfect solution, but if you are time rich, cash poor, it's an excellent solution. If you are cash rich, time poor, you know, if your guys, like, for our guys to be on site an extra day, that's extra subsistence and accommodation costs and their time, right? I would, you know, it's always time. People's time is always going to be the most expensive thing for us. So we want to try and make sure that we can install quickly. So it's an easy bit of maths. You just got to look at the build time cost and go, well, it's going to take me maybe a couple of days of rock wool and vapor foil, or I can do it in, you know, like a 3/4 of a day if I do PIR. And what's the difference in labor cost?
Are you guys making your panels in the shop or off-site, or when you go out and do a build, is it ground up?
It's ground up for every one of our installations. Everything, probably because most of our designs are, you know, based on a specific room in someone's house where they're like, oh, I want this room to be the sauna. So it's completely bespoke. You know, we measure up, calculate the amount of materials required. The benches are made to measure as well. So then the guys turn up on at the start of the week and start preparing the space accordingly. And it's something that then, you know, they're getting something that is uniquely designed around their requirements. And it's
fitted to the space.
Yeah, there's no compromises. It's not a modular solution that might, it may just be small things as well, like accessibility. If they're, you know, some of our clients, if there are mobility issues, then you've got to think about how in a small space you want to enable easy entry and egress. Then you don't want to just, those people don't want to have one of these modular cabins that's sort of one solution to fit all spaces.
Right.
Yeah. Just to add to that, so we do have some modular cabin options, but they're for outdoors, right? Because the outdoor requirements for a space are less kind of strenuous, and the important thing here is what happens to the space that it's in, right? So if you have the modular cabin kits, to anybody who's under any impression that they're anything other than a posh shed, right? They're a leaky posh shed. So our entry-level outdoor cabin solution is a modular cabin kit, a modular cabin kit, not a shit.
Yeah,
a modular cabin kit.
I'd never buy one of those.
No, they're good for what they are, right? So you overspec the heater. You know, you overspec the heater. You insulate the kind of ceiling void, but the wall panels are just hollow, and you deal with the fact that you're pouring a lot of water. You make it steamy. The steam works its way out, right?
Yeah. Hey,
if you're going into someone's home, you can't do that, right? Because you're going to get steam, condensation, damp, mildew building up around the cabin. And so what you'll find with a lot of these indoor modular kits is they'll very cleverly in the photos show it in a bathroom or next to a swimming pool. So they'll put the picture of it already in a wet room space.
Mm-hmm.
So if you took that and you stuck it in your living room, you would be like, where's all this condensation coming from? Like, how have I got damp in my living room?
Yeah, you're done with sauna, and then you go out and you lay on your couch, and then your ass is wet, and you're like, how'd that happen? What percent of your builds are, in America we call it backyard, you guys call it garden, as opposed to indoor? Is there a number, a percent, if you just had to rough?
I would say at a guess, it's probably 80-20 indoor. So the majority of our work is made up by bespoke indoor installations. We would have, between 3 and 5 big outdoor bespoke garden buildings a year. And then, I don't know, like tens and tens of little modular cabin kits. We probably do similar, slightly less, but similar, slightly fewer, but similar numbers of log saunas, traditional log saunas. So we have this really cool supplier up in northern Finland, a 3rd generation log cabin builder, just on the Arctic Circle, and they make like log buildings where in like 5 centimeters of the cross section there's like 50 to 100 growth rings. So it's grown so slowly and so dense that by comparison, the spruce and the pine that grows here in the UK is like 5 growth rings per 10 centimeters. It's just pithy, good for fence posts and chipboard.
Is that the same material over your shoulder, Max?
Yeah. That's just here. This is
that
our meeting room.
Would that be spruce species? Okay. Yeah. Right on. And tell us, Max, about your meeting room. What did you guys elect to do and build there? What's over your shoulder?
It's still in progress, but we have a sort of a big dead space at the end of our office that we wanted to turn into the meeting room. So rather than just build like a stud timber frame, it was like what would make the space feel a little bit more special, a little bit more authentically Finnish. And Jake had the bright idea of ordering an indoor log cabin. So I mean, I don't want to lift the oh, there, it's too late. You can see we're still partway through installing it, so you can see behind the wizard's curtain, as it were.
I know.
But
I love that.
It'll become like the home cinema thing at the weekends. We can maybe come in here with a couple of, I don't know, who knows? It's a nice space anyway.
Well, you guys may relate to this. I mean, to me, a sauna should never be completed. There's always little tinkering and nuances. And I think that's what makes it personal and special. So I hope you never finish that sauna in your office there. Yeah. So back to the slice of the pie in just brief fashion. I mean, if you were to look at all of your work and stuff, the indoor 100% electric, indoor electric is the biggest slice of your business then?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's in part due to lifestyle choices of British people. So the majority of the people that want to incorporate sauna into their personal and private routine are very busy individuals, and they want the convenience factor of being able to turn a switch and turn it on. Then I love wood burning sauna. For me, it's such an amazing experience, and it is so different and so enjoyable. But I can understand why that's not right for everybody. The other thing that we have here, which I know you guys have in some states in the US, which is like we have smokeless zones. So if you live in a city, for example, you can't just light a wood burning sauna. You have to live somewhere rural. And your local council or your region, your borough has to basically permit smoke. So it's something that we were in the process of like working with our heater suppliers to be able to provide wood burning heaters that would work in the UK cities. But actually, and one of our suppliers got a wood burning heater that passed the German smoke flue gas regulations called the BIMSCH, which is like notoriously difficult to do. And we pitched all the stuff to the British, the DEFRA, the Department for Environmental Farming and Rural Affairs. They came back and were like, nope, our NOx restrictions here in the UK and cities is so strict, like there's just no way. And that's a real shame.
Mm-hmm. It is.
But I think
go ahead, Max.
Sorry,
please.
You kind of also alluded to the convenience aspect just then, Jake. But that's like, I think that is so key in the British consumption of everything. There's, you know, supermarkets are now tending towards having more automated checkouts than you know, humans, staff on checkouts. You see it in the music consumption, and all kinds of media consumptions are on demand and handy on your phone when you need it. I can listen to a million different artists at my convenience on, you know, different streaming services or whatever. And you know, my favorite kind of sauna experience stems from what I've experienced in Finland, which would be outside next to some water with a wood burning sauna. But for people that don't necessarily have the garden space if they're living, or backyard space if they're living somewhere that's very urban, which is very common with the population density of the UK, and then also, you know, the amount of time it takes Jake or I to get a sauna properly up to temperature with wood burning, you know, heat a large volume of stones, and if it's outside and the weather's not great, then you've got to go out and chop wood in the rain, and sometimes it's just like, oh, forget it, I'll stay inside or whatever. Whereas if it's in your house and you can flick it on, or even on a delay timer, you know that you're going to be back in a couple of hours and it can just be ready, then that makes such a difference.
Max, I gotta say, you're sounding like such a millennial, but you're right on, man. I hear you. How about you're in a pub, right? You're in a pub and you're controlling the music on your headphones because the pub is playing Lady Gaga or something, and then you go over to the other app and you fire up the sauna, right?
Well, exactly. But I mean, the ideal home has both, doesn't it? It has a wood burning sauna outside, brother, and a nice little electric one for every day.
Amen.
Yeah, I was speaking to a client last week who was like, well, we want the electric sauna to be like this, this, and this. And, you know, I always, when I'm talking to clients, I'm like, well, this is my setup. This is what I do. And these are the choices that I've made and why I've made them. And he was like, yeah. So we're going to have the electric sauna here, and then we're going to dig a swimming pond down there. And then you guys are going to come back and build a wood burning sauna out there, so that I've got the electric for the day to day. And then when I'm on the weekend, when I want to just relax, I've got like wood fired pizza oven, chill out area, outdoor kitchen, and wood burning sauna by the lake. And I was like, you get it, man. This is exactly it, right? It's the two sides of.
So I got one thing to say about that, Jake, is when I come to the UK, I want to go find that guy. Will you give me his address? I want to go hang out with him. He's the kindred spirit.
Glenn, when you come to the UK, we should go to that one. You saw I posted in British Sauna Society last year. It was the first ever Ito Kiowas that we sold to the UK.
Oh,
potentially,
I think I said that. Yeah. I think I typed to you and said, man, when I come over, we're going there. Yeah, you know, I have a very fond AK-57 experience with Jesse from Narvi. He took me in the west coast of Finland, near where Narvi headquarters is, and I had him on Sauna Talk. Yeah, it was the heat. You know, you guys referenced this and alluded to this before, and you know, heat is very universal. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're in the west part of Finland or up, you know, near Newcastle or in the north of Minnesota, USA. I mean, it's egalitarian, you know, and I'm just rambling with you, but I was able to take 50 saunas in 12 days in Finland. I was a madman because that heat was so familiar to me. And I got exposed. I got to admit, I came home with a greater appreciation to ventilation by my experience over there. I wouldn't say I was building saunas too tight here or advising it too tight, but yeah, they're nuts for ventilation. But once you get those elements right, like you're talking about, Jake, sauna,
Yeah.
I think that there's like this world, there's a potential here now for this world good sauna travel community where we can go somewhere and find a kindred spirit with a kick-ass awesome sauna and feel like we're in our backyard.
Yeah, and it's changing all the time. So like when we started this, there wasn't anybody else doing what we were doing, and that's how we've made such a success of what we're doing, right? Because the offering here it has been so slim for so long, and we started doing something differently, and now there's between 3 and 6 new proper Finnish saunas in the UK every month, and by a simple bit of maths, and that's just ones we've installed, right? We also advise a lot and send a load of equipment and stuff like that. So you're talking like hundreds of people across the year are getting proper traditional Finnish saunas that function properly, and there's this like snowball effect of people being like, oh my goodness, I tried my neighbors, it's incredible, it's nothing like the crap that I've had to endure at the health club, and so there's this kind of like weird awakening, as it were. I suppose it's a bit of a rebirth, because I heard a similar thing happened in the 70s when the Finns first started exporting sauna around the world, and they were taking their values with them. But there's certainly been a dark ages between from what I can gather from like the 80s until very recent history of very bad construction, knowledge, understanding, etc. And the internet has certainly, we are constantly trying to put more educational information out there, and I think coupled with social media groups, some sites like yourselves, that level of education is improving. We also have a wood-burning sauna trailer that we built. So like yourselves, we're big fans of the trailer sauna, and being able to park that up by a lake, you get a lot more freedom and flexibility. And instead of, for us, it's an educational tool, so we can take it places and show people the real deal. So it's definitely something that people are interested in. It's compounded by the fact that Dr. Jari Laukkanen in Finland has been posting this incredible health benefits research, which has been picked up by people like Rhonda Patrick on My Found Fitness, and disseminated through channels like Joe Rogan Experience and things like that, which just suddenly you've got all these people interested in proper sauna, cold plunge, heat shock proteins, reduction in Alzheimer's and dementia risk, improvements in cardiovascular health. Big one, improvements or reduction in your risk of getting pneumonia, right? So anybody worried about COVID, we're yet to get him on our little podcast that we do to interview him about, what's the likely kind of risk reduction in relation to COVID, and I'm sure the answer is nobody knows right now. But
right on. There's a lot to unpack with that. Well said on many levels. Taking it in reverse. Okay. So the health studies that have come out is that the reduction in the risk of cardiovascular disease. That's simply pronounced, and so if one were to get COVID, those that are healthy and have very good cardiovascular function are more apt to lick this thing quicker. So, that's a simple deduction. Sure, we don't have studies right now. You take 100 people and 50 with COVID, 50 without, and who's going to, come out shiny.
Yeah.
But we can infer.
But if your immune system is better, right, because of the lifestyle choices that you have, then you're more likely to survive any pandemic.
Amen, brother.
So there's an interesting thing here as well, which is the whole understanding whether there is a benefit specifically to COVID. So obviously we understand it helps reduce the pneumonia risk, But it also promotes production, a significant increase in the production of killer T cells or cytokines in the blood. And the problem with COVID is that when people are getting pneumonia, it's because of cytokine crash, which is where your killer T cells go crazy, telling all the cells in the linings of your lungs to die and come away from the sides of your lungs, and you end up with this excess of dead cells, which causes a buildup of fluid, and then you get pneumonia. So I'm sure they're probably scrabbling to do all kinds of research to understand how it affects the function of these killer T cells or the production of them, and what specifically might help in SARS-like coronavirus-related viruses and things like that affect the respiratory system particularly. So
right.
yeah, it's such an interestingly relevant time for all this kind of research, which is still, I guess, in its infancy, but still seems to shout so many benefits.
Right on, Max.
I
agree.
This talking about on that subject as well, and this is there's a book by a guy called Dr. Matthew Walker, which is called Why We Sleep, which has been a big hit across the world, right? And in that book, he says, if you sleep well, you have all these health benefits. And when you read Jari Laukkanen's research, he's like, we don't know why this is happening. We know that it's making you healthier and not have these issues. And one of the things that we've not touched on here, and I think people overlook, is like, when you sauna and cold plunge together for a few times, right, in an evening, let's say, when you get into bed, you fall asleep like, boom, you are out cold, and you sleep like you haven't slept since you were a teenager, and you can't get up in the morning. You feel like you've had this deep, satiating sleep. And I think, that's something else that, in our busy lives with sauna, you get something where you can switch off, because it's very hard to take your phone in there. It can be done, but you disconnect, you relax properly. It's not just tolerated for 10 minutes after a workout, but like an hour and a half of pure relaxation time. You have a massive euphoria, so you feel good and you feel healthy, and then you sleep really well afterwards. And everybody could do with that kind of relaxation in their very busy lives these days. And if it's going to make you live longer and be healthier, then more of that for everyone, definitely. And I think people talking about wellness and health and well-being being like such an important thing for our future, I think is going the right way. Certainly, I have found that. So this is weird thing that's happened in my life as we've become more successful as a company, we've become busier and busier, and now we're at the level where we work all the time, right? And most people, when they get to that level, they're like, oh, I'm gonna burn out, it's so it's just too much, I'm working every hour, waking hour, and I can't stand it anymore, and it's too much. And as we've done that, as we've grown this business, we've had more and more saunas more and more regularly, because we live and breathe what we do. And my stress tolerance, as I sauna more regularly, has meant that I can tolerate working all the time, and I think when I speak to people about who sauna regularly, they're like, oh yeah, like I just, the shit doesn't stick, things happen in the day and you don't feel overwhelmed at all. And I think there's something there, definitely, that to be able to have that level of stress tolerance, I think it comes from the combination of sauna and cold plunge together. When you look at things like the Wim Hof method and the way that people talk about that, allowing them to have better stress tolerance. But I think we're just really at the beginning of people like, all it's going to take is a few thousand people everybody showing 2 or 3 of their friends how this thing has changed their life. And there's going to be this huge cascade. And, you know, in 5 or 10 years time, you and me and Max could be talking again, and we could be in a world where saunas in people's homes are as common as kitchens outside of Finland, which
well done.
at the moment isn't the case. But.
And good saunas at that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get back to that, to your point. You know, Jake, you had mentioned earlier about, you know, people through education becoming more aware of good sauna. And I had this conversation just the other day. Again, the parallel to Great Britain and the United States is really spot on as it relates to sauna and the education of good sauna. The health club is, you know, maybe where most people experience this thing. And I akin it to sort of like rungs on a ladder. And I'm not even bringing infrared into this conversation because you and I, the three of us know it's not a sauna. but you know, from the layman's point of view, you know, they see a wood-lined closet, and when it says the word sauna on it, and they're being marketed to that potentially in this metaphor or whatever is sort of a first rung, and then, you know, maybe that health club would be a second rung. Of course, you can't toss water on the rocks because that's illegal and it's going to make it electrocution, right? Which, you know, is just another way of saying that the health club doesn't want to replace the sauna stones or the heater from China that is too thin of metal.
Yeah.
Well, that's another whole story. But anyway, so then you get up to some serious rungs of a ladder, and I'm going to bring in another metaphor into this equation, and it's like beer. Okay, now this isn't fair because you guys have great beer. I mean, you know, we love Newcastle beer in America, and you've had great beer for a long time. But imagine a country.
Do you have Newcastle brown ale in America?
Man, exactly. I mean, our oldest son drinks Newcastle brown ale, so we're helping your economy.
Oh no,
we're helping. Yeah, but so
excellent.
And Yuki Brown.
Yeah, I got to tell you though, in America, like good beer hasn't always been around. Like we've had shit beer for decades, and we had two macro makers of beer that owned all the tap lines and all the pubs.
Like Miller and Budweiser, right?
Bingo. And then we had a real craft brewing renaissance, or revolution really is the right word for it. And when you were outlining this exponential experience of good sauna, where, you know, someone, you know, down the street comes over and there's a good sauna, and it's really similar to what happened in the United States about craft beer. The early adopters got into either making their own beer or buying, you know, from these early craft brewer makers that just started seeing exponential growth of their product because their product's fresh, it's local, it's a little more expensive, but quality produced, and tastes great, you know. And so this Miller Bud thing was sort of slowly, I mean, they didn't know any of this industry was kind of evolving and biting them, you know, at the fringes. But now, you know, you have this craft brewing thing is like a big deal. And I see a parallel in this as people climb the rungs of the ladder to more quality in the world of heat, are going to be experiencing more and more of the craft brewing, say, of our saunas. So it's a revolution really, I'm seeing over here in America as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you should use an alcohol analogy, because I often use something similar to describe to people a very similar thing, which is when I'm trying to explain to somebody about heaters with large stone capacities, right? I liken it to kind of fine wine or drinking wine, because for two reasons. Firstly, when you try and explain to somebody how the heat and the steam is better on a heater with more stones, it's like trying to explain to somebody how this bottle of wine tastes better than that. If you haven't tasted it, if you haven't experienced it, it's impossible to appreciate. You know, if all you've ever tried is one of those tiny little heaters with like 3 stones on the top, then you just don't know how good it can be, right? And the other one is like, if you buy wine by just looking at the label, you know, then you're going to be happy with just there's some companies out there that make very shiny looking saunas that don't really function very well. And I'm like, look, if you like wine by the label, You know, you just look at it and go, this one looks like a nice bottle. Then you'll be fine with a shiny cabin. But if you drink wine because you like the taste and the experience, then you've got to have a proper Finnish sound. You know, you've got to go for the real deal. So,
I want to add. I'll carry on from what Glenn was saying as well before. In that the whole analogy with beer, and particularly craft ales in the States, I think it's interesting because, and it's something that Jake, when you were on the panel at the World Sauna Forum, there was this whole discussion because I'll come on to that. But I think that it's part of the reason that people maybe have turned, and there's been this big renaissance in proper ales and beers in the States, maybe because I think people really value authenticity. And when you can see through a product like the mainstream lagers and beers for what they are, which is just a big mass-produced thing that doesn't have any care or
any soul
or passion put into it, then of course people aren't going to buy into that in the same. It doesn't matter if it's twice the price for a pint of the craft ale than the Budweiser, because it's got twice the experience and backstory behind it. And I think this is promising for the way we lament infrared, that whole industry, because there was a supplier, I don't want to name them, at the World Sauna Forum, who
not one of our suppliers.
No. We
a
wouldn't
manufacturer,
yeah, manufacturer, and they were now on the infrared bandwagon. They were peddling infrared as a something to further sauna, and something. I think I raised my hand to ask a question at the end, and that it's a genuine concern, is that if the Finns sort of embrace it rather than reject it, then it's almost like cultural appropriation. It kind of muddies their cultural history and this amazing I don't want to just call it a product, because it's more than that. But the thing that we've become
a cultural, a centuries-old cultural tradition.
Cultural
millennia old. It goes way back. The whole sweat, sweat bathing. But I think that people will in time see through that. The guise of infrared just being essentially marketing money, and realize that it's not an authentic thing. It's not. They will see through that. I have faith.
The problem that we have with infrared, right? And we have a health benefits series on our website where, Max, myself, and our family and my partner, we're all fortunate enough to have had a good academic upbringing at good education establishments, etc. And so we really, really turn our back on this, what we in the UK call snake oil sales. And I've given snake oil meaning just like quackery, like somebody pretending to sell something that works that doesn't, like baldness cures and all that kind of, that sort of stuff. So we take that same approach to the academic literature for sauna. So we've compiled a database of all the research and all the information. And the thing that is really problematic in infrared is the people that sell the infrared don't play by the same rules. They claim things like infrared cures cancer, infrared does is going to make your hair regrow, and it's going to make you thinner, more beautiful, all this stuff. It's like a bad American infomercial, right? They're like, do you wake up feeling tired in the morning? You need this. And, you're just like, oh, that must be me. I'm tired every morning. So I must, they're just really preying on they're like the worst kind of people. And there's no authenticity there, as Max has pointed out. But also, if you look at the science behind infrared, right? When you heat up a traditional Finnish sauna, your average electric heater is going to be like 9 kilowatts. A wood burning heater might be 16 or 20 kilowatts of energy output, right? And basic physics 101 here. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It just transfers states. And when energy is put into a space. So let's say you're heating up your sauna, you're putting in 9 kilowatts of electric power per hour, 9 kilowatt hours of electric power. You're heating up all the stones. When the stones get hot and the timber gets hot and the benches get hot, they re-radiate black body radiation, which is far infrared radiation. And how much do they re-radiate? They re-radiate the equivalent of 9 kilowatts or thereabout, right? So most of these infrared sauna boxes that people have with their little 3 kilowatts of heater, and they think, oh, well, this is better for me than a traditional sauna. You actually, 9 times out of 10, if you drill down, you get more of the good far infrared radiation, which has all of these supposed health benefits, as well as some legitimate ones. You get more of that in a traditional sauna, and you also get a ton of other proven scientific health benefits, right? So I get people calling me up going, I've read online that infrared's better for me than Finnish sauna. And you're just like, how is that possible? You're getting more of the good stuff with a Finnish sauna and a load of extra health benefits thrown in there. You know, like, don't get me wrong, infrared clearly has some health benefits, but a traditional Finnish sauna working properly will give you all of those benefits and more. So that's my first big problem with the infrared industry. The second one is the history of that industry comes about because, well, it was from what I know, it's actually pioneered by the Japanese, but it was adopted very quickly by the Americans, where you guys have 110 volt power, right? It can be quite difficult to get a good electric heater that delivers the power where needed. So some really clever, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of very bright, very innovative Americans out there who looked at this and went, we can combine an infrared panel heater and a steam generator and kind of replicate the sauna experience and make it kind of like a sauna. And they started doing this, and then they were like, instead of us making this just a replica experience, why don't we rebadge this? Why don't we go out there and get celebrity testimonials, pay off a few doctors to write about some bold claims? And, you know, don't get me wrong, there's a phrase that I love, right, which is until the 1900s, right, people in the world used to just exchange money, and then the Americans learned how to make money. And that's certainly true in this case. So somebody went, hang on, if we put some marketing dollar behind this, we've got this huge industry, this, like, you know, the American wellness industry is vast. You know, UK is big, but America is another level, the US. So they put some money behind this, and, you know, they spent 30, 40 years just hammering home that infrared is this snake oil cure to everything. And instead of standing up to it, instead of the Finns saying exactly what I've just said there, that hang on a second, you're appropriating our culture, our thing is a million times better, why would we want to lessen the experience by using panel heaters and buy more Finnish sauna instead of fighting it like that? We've got a few of these kind of Nordic companies that are just like, well, we'll just sell everything to do with this, instead of like, and I think those people are actually committing a bit of a cultural crime, because, you know, instead of celebrating something which in anywhere else in the world there'd be somebody fighting their corner, like UNESCO World Heritage status, or like Native American cultural movements that like defend like sweat lodges and and stop people like poorly appropriating it, right? And instead, the Finns kind of stepped back and went, oh, okay, well, you guys can just totally like do what you want with this thing. And not I think it's such a shame.
Yeah, man, I'm with you, Jake, on many levels, you know, and not just step back, but join the bandwagon by offering their own kind of infrared light bulb closets. And now one more is, look at how the French stood up to the bastardization of champagne. I mean, they went and got this sort of global clarification that champagne is not champagne if it doesn't come from the region of Champagne. So
that's right. So that protect. It is. So so the last 2 years I've spoken at the World Sauna Forum in Finland, and the first time I stood up and gave a very impassioned speech about this issue, because it's something where I see it as, so my background is I studied archaeology and anthropological, sort of ethnography and anthropology, and for me, somebody with that background, to see what's kind of happening in terms of appropriation, I genuinely think that that's a tragedy, especially because the real deal is so much better. And it's also a case, I think, a lot of Finnish culture is very humble, and so as is generally understood, American culture can be quite forceful. So I feel like in some respects, having a very humble culture and a very forceful culture in conflict there's only going to be one winner there. And so I think you guys in Sauna Times championing what you do is helping level that playing
Right.
field.
Well, I hereby declare that we need a diplomatic British to lead the cause, because me with an American accent is not going to do it. And boy, did I touch a nerve. Listen, man, I got to tell you,
yeah.
I touched a nerve. And look, imagine if you were trying to do imagine if Finnmark was in the US. I mean, you're in the UK,
yeah.
where you're so much closer to Finland. There is this European sensibility. There is this Nordic awareness. But over here, especially in California, I got to tell you, and in most parts of the United States, if I'm just traveling around or I happen to bring up the word sauna, it's almost to the point now, and I'm not trying to be negative or alarmist, but it seems like more times than not, in people's mind, they're thinking infrared light bulb closet. And I will never use the word infrared and sauna in the same sentence, because this is part of this whole thing that you're talking about, is they really need to be separated legally or some odd thing, because it's a travesty.
So,
and I'm putting gas on your fire, Mr. British diplomat.
In my talk, in my first one, I highlighted the Champagne region, and the thing is that protection actually only exists for foods and foodstuffs, right? It's like protects, if you have a particular cheese from a particular region and things like that, which I think is a shame. And I think there are ways that it could be protected. But I'm also confident that there is change happening, because in the same World Sauna Forum, the World Sauna Forum is attended by people from all over the world, and there were quite a few people from the US, some people that go regularly and some people that just kind of come ad hoc. And there was a couple there who had a company that had been selling infrared cabins in the US. And we got to watch them experiencing Finnish sauna for the first time. And you should see this couple, right? The guy who goes from his first proper sauna experience down into a cold plunge. And he gets out and he shouts across the water to his wife. He's like, "Honey, we've got to change our business model. This is incredible." And I saw that and I was just like, this is the problem. The problem isn't that people have been missold infrared. It's just that everybody doesn't know what they're missing. And I think, it's going to take a bit of work, but it's a worthy cause, and it's what keeps Max and I getting up in the morning is kind of converting people to this. So
beautifully said, guys. Fabulous. I have a few.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, man. No, thanks for your time. I said on the outset, those listening to this episode, I think the challenge is going to be, before I hit record, the challenge is going to be trying to wrap this up, because I hope this is not our last sauna talk. I really look forward to visiting with you guys. We are such kindred spirits on many levels, and I'm just really taken from the heart and overjoyed with all of this that we're talking about. It's just so rewarding for me on a personal level to be sharing this kind of stuff in this parallel universe of what you guys are doing in the UK to what the world is like here in the USA. And I didn't fall off the turnip truck with sauna myself. Very similar experience to how you first became exposed to it, and very similar passion and conviction toward bringing good sauna forward. It's so enjoyable, isn't it, to share good sauna?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a few standard questions. We're not done yet, but I just kind of wanted to put a bow on this. I'd love to ask each of you a few standard questions. Before I do, is there anything you want to share? Anything we didn't cover, or any thoughts? Final words before a few standard questions. Max,
I'm gonna have to
I'll
change
start with you.
scene real quickly. It's all
Yeah.
right. I'm just changing scene because my
Are you going for more
laptop is
tea?
about to run out of battery.
Oh, I thought you were going
No.
for more tea. Hey, in the spirit of everything, everyone listening here, I made a cup of tea. Max said, "Oh, excuse me." It was so British. I was like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna go make some tea." So I did that. So during our sauna talk, we were each sipping tea. Mine wasn't Earl Grey, but it was close enough. How about Jake? Or either of you guys? Is there anything else? Any last words or
So
some questions?
yeah, I mean, there's a whole other episode to be had about sort of. I mean, we've had people on our podcasts talking about the culture in the States for sauna, and there's a few oddities that we see that that don't really match. Like Upper Peninsula Michigan, right, is where most of the Finns moved to, and there's a huge sauna culture there. But then they have like some really unusual traditions, around the way they particularly build sauna and like what they do, and like the key ones are the kind of heaters they use, the number of stones they put on it, the type of stones that they use, and those people, they can't be moved. You're like, you kind of, so there's a whole geology lesson around what kind of stones go well on a sauna heater,
right?
But I think we best save that for another time, because I could sit for ages talking about that.
Love it. And when we do that, we will talk about empirical, like the empiricalness to this. And hey, as an anthropologist, is that what you were studying, Jake? Some anthropology and stuff?
So I studied archaeology, and as part of what I was studying, there's a large amount of overlap with anthropology, both for my undergrad and master's.
Right on. Well, this is Jake. I want to offer an invitation right here and now. This would be a great, I'm offering you to come to the United States. I'm in northern Minnesota, which is very close to Lake Superior. And then, we'll hop over to the UP, and you can bring your geology hammer, and we'll do some empirical analysis of the anthropological evolution of North America sauna. How's that sound?
Well, I can tell you right now, right? I know the stones are, they use granite pebbles, right, from the sides of Lake Superior, and there's two types of igneous rock, or two. There's your acid and basic, or mafic, right? And mafic is iron containing, and acid is your granites, your microgranites, and they are made of quartz, mica, and feldspar. And the problem is that feldspar, when it gets wet, it goes through a process called hydrolysis, which causes it to break down into essentially clay minerals. So you end up with a pile of sand and a pile of clay minerals when it breaks down. And I've played about with granite on the heater before, and they do break down fairly quickly. The other thing that granite does is it releases radon gas, which is carcinogenic if it's in an enclosed environment as well. However, jury's out here. There must be a secret sauce in the Lake Superior stones, because I've seen people say that they've had them for like 60 years on a heater, but I just know that granite would not last that long on a heater unless you were only using it like once every 6 months,
Right. So two things on that. First of all, if you get into those multi-syllabic words with anybody in the UP, they're just going to hand you a beer and say, "Shut up." but the second thing is maybe we're not talking about granite, because hey, look, I subscribe to this. I mean, it's quite a ritual to go on the North Shore and collect these rounded stones. And I would argue into the mix, then you got to bring that hammer with you. But I would throw into the mix that we're probably talking about an apple and an orange in terms of the composition of this rock, because I've used this rock, this exact stone we're talking about, for 30 years. And after my Finland trip, I got to tell you, Jake, I brought some olivine diabase back with me, and I've been sourcing. This is really geeky shit that I'd love to talk more
Yeah.
with you on. And I've been in my heater up here at my cabin, which I'm going to show you here real quick. I don't know if you can see out my window. You see the lake?
Oh,
Yeah,
beautiful.
beautiful.
You guys are going to come here. We're going to have our own sauna forum. And I don't know, there's the
Nice.
sauna building down there.
Excellent. Oh, I've lost audio.
Glenn, I think you've unplugged yourself.
Any better?
Yeah,
There we
you go.
go,
You're
yeah.
back.
Okay. Yeah. See, I get all excited about this stuff. I mean, I can't talk about this stuff with the average guy up and down the street. So it's really great to visit. But back to the sauna stone thing. So I replaced half of my stones with the olivine diabase, and I kept half of the Lake Superior rounded stuff, these rounded stones. And first of all, when I took out half of the stones that had been sitting in my sauna since 1996, first of all, the Finns, they say you got to replace your stones every year. I'm like, man, somebody's giving them a marketing story, because mine have been there since 1996. I took out half of those stones, and there was not 1 ounce of grain of sand of breaking down.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so we got to look into what's going on there, because that's cool.
That's remarkable.
Jake, this is a project for us, and I think that, you know, in the world of having fun doing work, it'd be lovely to have you over. And in the time of COVID, if you want me to send you some of these stones, maybe we do that. I don't know. Way geeky
So
shit.
on my talking about geeky stones, on my sauna heater at home, a while back I went to Iceland and I brought some stones from the volcano that stopped air travel for like a few months back in the, I don't know, it must have been 2010s or something like that. May have been earlier actually. Eyjafjallajökull, I think it's called, but I probably butchered that. I picked up some stones that had obviously been from the blast, from the explosion, and I took a few back with me, and I put them on my sauna heater, and like, they are solid. They're so good. And my geology lessons tell me they because they're basalt, they perhaps shouldn't be so good, that they should be more prone to breaking down, but actually they're great, and the steam off them is excellent as well. They're my favorite to
They've
pour
probably
onto.
been heat cured, right? You know, coming out of that, the heat of the volcano is probably miles more than the heat that's generated off of the heater. But okay, great.
Yeah, and then into like -20 snow and.
Yeah, right on. Exactly. Okay, so sauna stones, TBD.
Yeah.
Anything else out of? Well, let's go over to you, Max. Any last things you wanted that we didn't cover? A point or two, or save it? You in good shape?
Yeah, there's probably a million things. I don't know. I love to indulge in all this kind of geeky stuff, because my background's more of a technical nature in terms of what I studied, and I guess I loved the idea of sort of experimentation and incrementally testing things to try and find out whether empirically you can find the best recipe for sauna, whether you can actually go, no, this is the best, and this is how I can set out with evidence to explain. But until we have the resources to fund Max's lab.
You have a lab. You have a lab here.
Yeah.
It's what Max is talking about is having like 4 freestanding saunas with like sensor probes and Arduinos and like
to measure
it's brilliant.
all the temperature, humidistats, everything, and map that kind of thing. And I don't know. That's a different kind of level of nerdy, and it's probably nothing that would yield any interesting conversation.
Right on. But hey, the journey is worth it, right? The journey is more fun than probably the destination.
Yeah, of course.
Or any findings. It's fun to geek.
Yeah, and for that exact reason, I almost prefer chatting about the journey with respect to people's journeys through sauna experience. So yeah, I'm always more intent on hearing people's favorite sauna experience, where that was, what that was, you know, like, and the specifics, whether it was like, oh, do you know whether it was like a homebrew heater, or was it like a big old Aito in Finland or something, or all that kind of stuff is what I love chatting about. So
beautiful.
yeah, and
Same.
save all the sauna tales for next time.
Lovely. And hey, I buried the lead as it relates to my testing on sauna stones, Jake. So half of the sauna has these Native American Lake Superior rocks, and then the other half is from Finland, the olivine diabase. And I've had at least a dozen different people in the sauna. And they would close their eyes, and I would introduce the same. Hey, Max, this is total your speed. I would introduce the same amount of water, you know, for rock A, and then the same amount of water for rock B, and all that. And I got to tell you, in the global sauna stone competition contest, very, you know, unscientific, the Lake Superior stones have been winning, or have won quite consistently.
Wow.
So now we got some work cut out for us.
The thing is this is where it gets very philosophical, is to understand, you know, like what the best sauna is, or the best recipe for the sauna. First, you must understand the question, right? It's the whole Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy thing, with the answer being 42. And well, first you must understand the question. In that scenario, you need to understand essentially what is the perfect lolu in terms of, is it something that builds slowly, so it doesn't have like an abrupt front to it as it comes, like the steam propagating around a room, and then you can work back from that and go, well, then you probably want a stone with this kind of specific heat capacity, and one that maybe if the surface layer cools down more quickly, then it insulates the core, and then it won't evaporate as quickly as the core then reheats the stone. And it's all these kind of weird thermodynamic things. And,
right on, Max. But I would throw back
way
in
too
the
nerdy.
mix that I.
Oh, we've lost you again. You've disconnected yourself.
Yeah. Right when I was going to throw an argument. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Dude, that's the British way of winning the argument. It's just unplug the guy's microphone, right? I'm totally kidding. No, so it's about, so like, I like the empirical answer, you know, like it's what your experience is the best lolu, right? Could it be? Just
well, no, that's exactly what I'm trying to say, is that you have to, you know, it's also subjective, I guess, as well, but you have to understand what you're aiming for to understand what the recipe should be. You know, if you're aiming to make a cake, then, you know, you should look for flour, eggs, and sugar. But if you're aiming to make, you know, a steak dinner, then flour, eggs, and sugar aren't going to get you.
I mean, it sounds like an expensive experiment to send a bulk aggregate from Lake Superior to here, but I'm more than willing for us to set up two identical, like a sauna with two heaters, one with diabase, one with, and genuinely, you know, try this out, because it's all well and good us in Europe looking at these pictures of Americans with like granite pebbles and being like, hey, what you're doing is like, this is crazy, you know, like to add to this point, you know, the rounded stones, in the sort of European tradition, if you've had stones that have been submerged, then you get all the water goes into the cracks in permeable rocks. And so there's a risk that when you heat it back up again, if it's been submerged, that it can explode, right? So sandstone does it, limestone does it, and anything with very fine innate cracks where it's been submerged for a long time. So like the Finns will swear down, they'll be like, do not put stones on the heater that have been submerged. And then to see somebody from the States picking up a granite stone, we don't know whether it actually is granite, but some sort of stone that has been submerged off a lake shore, it's just like, so different, but I'm willing to explore it because let's give it a try.
Yeah,
Let's
man.
do some A/B testing.
Yeah, man. I'm all in on that deal. Okay, so Max, I'll start with you. You have a mobile sauna. It's wood fired, right? And you bring it around. If you could if you could take this mobile sauna anywhere in the world, what's the first place that comes to mind where you can enjoy sauna somewhere?
I guess I'm quite sheltered in that I haven't explored much more of the world than Europe. So I don't know really. I think for me the whole experience, this is so predictable, but the whole experience around sauna was somewhat crystallized and set in stone, having tried the real deal in Finland. And I really like being completely off grid, where your view, you can't see any sign of any man-made structures or any signs of life, and it's just you and the wilderness. So it would probably have to be somewhere in remote Finland. And I'm also I really love the aurora borealis, the northern lights. When it's dark enough, I do a bit of aurora twitching, and when there's conditions are conducive, I'll go outside and try and spot them. So it would have to be somewhere, northern Finland, around the time. I think it's around the equinox is the most favorable time for aurora. So
lovely.
I think that would be where I would take the trailer.
Yeah, Jake, same question.
So I've had the privilege of going to a lot of places around the world. I recently held a very nerdy competition with a lot of my friends and colleagues, and came out on top as having been to the most places all around the world. And even with that in mind, I would say, it's got to be Finland. So I think, the sauna culture for me is one that's embedded in that sort of, it's a switch off element, an element of relaxation that comes from being removed from the busyness of society. And now I realize the irony of saying that because Finland has like 4G everywhere, even in the wilderness, right? Because of Nokia. So you can be like on social media and be like 100 miles from anybody in the remote wilderness. But there's something to be said for like being in the middle of nowhere, and just the cleanliness of the water there, the freshness of the air. We in the UK, we have good water and fresh air off the sea, but whenever I go to Finland, I feel like I'm just like, like breathing really deeply. Like, this is the good stuff, get this in. And then when I go back to the UK, particularly if you drive into London, you can taste the pollution in the air. So,
well said.
Yeah.
Good. If you could sauna, Jake, with anybody in the world, dead or alive, past, present, who's the first person that comes to mind without thinking too hard, just sitting on the sauna bench?
That's really, that's an interesting one. I think the one person who I'd be really interested to speak more to on the sauna bench would be somebody like Wim Hof, right? He's the Iceman, purely because I use cold plunge a lot with the sauna, so like cold swimming, and for me the combination of the two is really great. And I feel like for a long time it was like sauna, and then I tried sauna and cold plunge, and I feel like it would be great to get his take on going from cold plunge only to sauna and cold plunge, and learn a little bit more about that.
So you're not alone with that answer, Jake, if that makes you feel any better or worse. I ask most all guests to Sauna Talk that question, and I think that that Wim Hof comes up, probably 4 or 5 times with guests. And
Right. Okay.
yeah, and if you get some time, you can listen to my interview with Wim. We were in Jamaica, so we were in a
Yeah.
sauna together, but it was on the beach. And he speaks about exactly your point. He talks about how to breathe on the sauna bench, and that was
Yeah.
quite a trip. So very good. You're not alone with that answer. Max,
Well, hopefully you can introduce us, and we can make that a reality. That'd be
oh
great.
yeah, Wim and I are best buds. I'll call him right now. Well, talk about, so yeah, my interview with him was in 2016, and he exploded soon after that. I mean, he is a
Yeah.
world figure. So when we get together, and we're going to collaborate more, and let's set an intention to get him in one of our global conferences, and we can fulfill your dream and hang out on the sauna bench. Unless we're going to do it. Anyway, Max, over to you. Who's the first person that came to mind when I asked the question?
Oh, well, again, I think my immediate thought was probably the most predictable answer, but would essentially be either Jake or, family, because it's where, for me personally as well, where the whole my sauna journey stemmed from, was that Jake was the spark that led me to this whole kind of discovery. And then it's also just, it's become such a huge part of my family's ritual and culture as well. So on the weekend, if we go back home, then my parents regularly fire up their wood burning sauna, and now that's just, for me, just feels synonymous with sauna. Is the almost like sitting around the dinner table together to have a family meal. It's the same kind of thing, and I don't think I could prioritize any, one night with some famous person that I idolized versus, just another night with my family.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you for that. As you think about, I'll stay with you on this one, Max. As you think about a day when you're going to sauna, from the moment you wake up to the lighting of the stove, round one, the first lolu, the first cold plunge, through the whole process, and even when you're done, maybe enjoying a little bit of a meal or what have you, and then tucking yourself in at night. We talked about sleeping and how well you sleep. As you think about the full spectrum of a day of sauna, if you had to distill it to one moment, tell us your favorite moment as it relates to sauna and a sauna day.
Damn, there's many little snippets that are floating around my head right now.
Yeah, you could
I think
a couple. You could share a couple with us if that makes it the question easier for you.
Well, yeah, I think I think there's a few different things. I like it when I've been in the sauna for a little while, and then maybe the humidity subsided slightly, and someone pours some water on the stones, and you feel that lolu building. And I always say it's like when you've been in a bathtub for about half an hour, and the water started to go a bit tepid, and you turn on the hot tap to make it warm again. And you're like, oh yeah, that's what warm feels like. We're talking 80, 90 degrees C. I'm not good at converting to Fahrenheit.
Sure.
So sorry.
How about 180 Fahrenheit? 180 Fahrenheit or so. Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems ridiculous to be like, oh yeah, that's what warm feels like or hot feels like when you're pouring the water on the stones at that temperature. But I love that. Always gets me. I also love post cold plunge when I recline. I've got some of my favorite memories of trying sauna in Finland is like lying down on. They don't, for whatever reason, they don't often have lounges, so I'll just find somewhere I can kind of recline, whether it be a lake shore or just some wood, and that's amazing. And then also that the kind of the euphoria, it's not the same kind of euphoria, but the feeling when you are tucked up in bed, like you were saying, and you're just falling asleep, and there's something like you never feel as comfortable and as ready to sleep as you do.
Beautiful.
You've had
Right
sauna.
Jake,
Those are
same
my
question. Thank you. Favorite
So
moment?
for me, I think there's something to be said for. I'm going to be more specific rather than give a series of general ones, but there's sort of two things that kind of come to mind. The first one is, if you go to the cold plunge, if you stay in the sauna till you feel like you cannot stay another second, like if I stay, I'm going to faint, right? And you go straight to the cold plunge, you go for a full cold plunge, and you make sure you get the back of your head wet, like where your hypothalamus is, and your body just freaks out. It's probably not good for you if you have an underlying condition, right? But you get the back of your head cool, and you just have the water just above your lip but below your nose, particularly in a nice lake when it's really still, just there. And you just breathe, and you really control your breathing. You slow it right down, and you're tingling all over, and you get to this really kind of weird meditative state. And you get this sensation where your breath gets cold in your warm nose. It's like, everybody knows what cold air feels like in a warm mouth, but there's something weird about breathing out, like when your nose is warm, breathing out cold air from inside your lungs. And that kind of feels weird, but you get out of the water then, dry yourself off. And I mean, I've heard people describe it as sort of sauna drunk or sauna high, but like that sensation at its quintessence, at the strongest I've ever had it, is like, I felt like I was going to fall over. I felt complete euphoria. I felt like a weird tingling, stinging sensation, like I was being stung by nettles everywhere, which I think is to do with the way that your nerve system, like nerves react to. It could also be histamine reaction to the heat, but this kind of tingling sensation everywhere. And then that experience compounded with being outside at nighttime, like when it's dark, and being on a lounger, so you basically lose your visual perception, so it kind of intensifies the physical feeling. And lying on a lounger in a dressing gown, so you're not going to be cold, but you've come out of the cold plunge, and just lying there, that kind of, I would say you can have quite significant kind of audio hallucinations and feeling of general well-being. I remember specifically a night in the middle of winter when I had to break the ice on the cold plunge, and I jumped into the cold plunge and was laying back in there, the back of my head. And I swear I could hear somebody talking, and I thought like, oh, a couple of people have come to the sauna and they're just having a chat. And I was just lying there, and I got myself out and dried up, and I looked around and there was nobody there. And I was like, but I swear I could hear it. Like, it sounded like just somebody just behind me was just having a conversation. And I was like, you know what? I think that was just, and you hear similar stories from mountaineers who like got stranded on Everest or something, and they talk about like hearing people talking and stuff. And I think it's something that goes on in your head when you're this completely, the extremes of physical perception. I think that's pretty cool.
It is. That is well described as well. So the moment of getting out of the cold plunge, as much as being in the cold plunge, that moment of body equalization when you're lying on the lounger there.
Yeah.
Yeah, very special.
I'm not mad keen on the moment where you actually get out, because something happens when you go into cold plunge where your body creates like a natural wetsuit where like the layer around your skin is all like comes up to a decent temperature. Right. And sometimes when that exact moment that you get out can be suddenly feel very cold, like that's very right. quickly.
Yeah. It's something about vasodilation, and what's happening there is all of your blood wants to go to the core to protect itself. And then once you get out, the blood starts flowing again, and it brings all that cold to the core. And then it's even more of a shock. I've been told.
Yeah.
But beautiful. You know, for I won't answer my own question, but I'll just share this. In this time of Corona, I've really settled into sauna pretty much on a regular basis as an every other day thing. You know, I've always saunaed it. You know, I had this 3 times a week thing in my head as a routine, and I've kind of fallen into this every other day thing. And you know, I've been enjoying sauna for over 30 years, and I still have this thing where I feel like if I'm going to do it every day, it may become too routine, or I may tire from it. So I kind of I let it, you know, like with exercise, with heavy exercise or something, I let a day pass. And today I'm just super excited that it's a sauna day, and we're just getting a rainstorm here now. I love sauna in the rain, as you know, obviously anyone would. So I get a little tingly with the anticipation of the experience, which I'm doing now, and I appreciate your answers, because again, it's a universal experience. So last question, and I think that with this question we will probably revisit a couple of comments that each of you made, but I ask every guest, and it's very appropriate for you too, is what do you think is most misunderstood about sauna that people listening like to this episode, maybe new to sauna, you'd like them to know? Either whoever's ready, tackle it. And if it's something
Okay, I'll jump on that one.
yeah, if it's something we
So,
discussed, all the better.
yeah, so I mean, there's lots of things, but I think the first one that jumps to my mind is just that it's an experience to be enjoyed and not something to be like just tolerated after a workout. So particularly in this like kind of British culture, we have this idea that like the medicine should taste foul. So like, you know, it can only be good for you if it hurts, or, you know, like the idea that you go for a workout and, you know, it must be good for me because I'm in pain. And like, I think that's really doesn't work for sauna. Like if you're going to sauna and for you, it's like, oh, I could tolerate just one more minute and I could get that little bit more benefit from it, then you're doing it wrong. Because the experience should be listen to your body and do what your body enjoys and enjoy the whole experience, because that's what wellness is about. You know, and I think, especially here in the UK, I don't know how it is in the US, but people confuse like gym is a place where I work out and that hurts. Sauna is in the gym, so that should also hurt. The sauna that's in the gym is crap, so I struggle to enjoy it. And so you get all these people where for them sauna is this thing that they're just tolerating and forcing pain upon themselves. And like we have this amazing experience of introducing customers who sometimes our customers have never tried the real deal, and they're just like we're there when they have that awakening, and they're just like, oh my goodness, like, are you kidding me? This is how it should be? Like, oh, even better, like, great. So yeah, that definitely.
My input on that would be just to further to that would be the social aspect. So much of my favorite memories about specific experiences would be around sharing it with friends, and you know, having beers and maybe some makara, some sausage afterwards, you know, over like a fire. It's essentially, it's another, you know, the whole thing about like friends and campfires, the whole social science behind the campfire. I don't know enough about it really, but I feel like it's another campfire. It's another meeting point, another forum that, you know, people can unwind and be themselves properly. And that's, I think, very powerful and not to be overlooked. Yeah, that would be my 2 pence.
Beautiful. Gentlemen, again, I got to emphasize, I've been wanting to have you on Sauna Talk. I know we've put this out there. Well, since COVID, you know, it's allowed me with Sauna Talk to bring on guests from further afield. I generally have this commitment to Sauna Talk on the bench, and you know, it's obvious with you guys in the north of England and me in the north of Minnesota that proximity isn't possible, but I was thinking I'd save our sauna talk for when I could come to the UK and we could do sauna talk on the bench. But with the COVID thing, it's like, hey man, we don't know how long this is going to be. So if for a few months now, it's fostered this idea to sauna talk like we are using technology. And I got to emphasize how friggin' awesome it is that I reached out to you guys just a couple hours ago and that we pulled this thing together really quickly. And how genuine, man. I mean, just to hear such kindred spirits, it just warms me. And I want to thank you each and both for, what you're doing. I'm so ecstatic about what you're doing in Great Britain and bringing good sauna to people. And thank you for being together.
Likewise.
Thanks.
Massive thanks to you as well, Glenn. And I think, perhaps you don't get the mirrored praise from your position, but, from my perspective, anybody who is helping further this cause of helping that snowball, that rock gather speed, that snowball roll downhill, is a saint and a prophet in my book, definitely. So hats off to yourself at Sauna Times, and we look forward to hosting you on the Sauna Twins podcast, where we can flip this around and we can grill you a little bit and poke a bit more into what you've been up to. So yeah, you're welcome anytime, as soon as the planes are flying.
Right on, man. Honored. Max, thanks. Jake, thank you guys both again. And we'll see you on the bench hopefully soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks.
Bye.
Is that it? Have we got it?
I think we got it, boys. Really well
Nice
done.
one.
Man. Thank you. You guys
that was
have
good
a great
fun.
evening. Really great.
Yeah,
Really
you
great.
too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah, I got to make sure I
well.
got to get the recording right. So you're putting a 50-something-year-old on a test here. Make sure I got the recording done properly. So we'll be in touch soon.
Let's hope you remember to hit record then.
Yeah, I got record. Now the real test. I'm going to capture the video file, audio file. Cheers, boys.
Brilliant
stuff.
Right on.
Okay, speak soon. Cheers, Glenn.
Cheers.